It's the 15th of September 2014. I wonder if sometimes you guys do what I do. You know, you think about things and you try and make some logical sense out of them. I mean, let's just take, for instance, looking at the Earth. You know, beneath the clouds there's a known activity going on this planet with regards to ownership. 1% own pretty much all of this planet that we live on, or so they think. Now, I've mentioned it to you a few times, but the question is, when you are confronted with logic and you know it to be true, why then, and I am guilty of it, but why do we pretend we never come across that information? What am I talking about? Since the beginning of this universe, let's just go with what mainstream scientists say with regards to the Big Bang. They feel that since time began, the stars and the solar systems and the galaxies have been moving away from each other in a relative speed, and the distance between each one of us have been getting further and further apart. So they believe at some point all this originated from one spot in the universe at the time when there was a large explosion. And at that time, every element on the periodic table of atoms began to exist. So, right from the heavier elements, some of the common ones you might know, uranium, plutonium, there's mendelevium, we could go on and on and on, but right down to the very lightest ones that we know exist and contain the least amount of electrons, such as hydrogen, helium, lithium, carbon, so on. The point is that let's just focus on the one that is necessary for life. Now, I say carbon is that one, but it is also, according to scientists, possible to find life that consists of a silicon life form, because it is very similar in nature, carbon and silicon. And off the top of my head, I think it's because of its bonding capability, or its valence. It has a valence to bond with 4 other atoms. But let's just look at carbon. Now, this is the point I want to make with regards to ownership. If trillions of years ago atoms were created, and at this very point in time your body is made up of the majority of H2O and carbon, which are water, hydrogen and carbon, if you are now using those atoms that have been around for so long, then how can you even lay claim to ownership of those atoms right now and say that you own your body? And if we just extend on that and say, well then, how can we own anything other than our body on this planet? It pretty much tells you that the idea of ownership, or the concept of ownership, is wrong. We have misinterpreted it. And if you understand that today, and I've mentioned this quite a few times, but if you understand ownership today, truly understand it, then you shouldn't go back on that foundation of logic once you understand that it is impossible to own anything. So to say that these 1% on this planet own as much as they do is complete and utter fantasy, because how could they possibly lay ownership right now to something on this planet, or even part of their body, when it has been here for millions and millions of years? Most people only live till they're 70, so it doesn't give them an entitlement to ownership of anything. In fact, a more accurate description of what we are trying to do is claim ownership or borrowship, because we literally are just borrowing things. But this is the point, guys. You can't own anything, and if you accept that people own something, then you're forgetting that foundation of logic. I hope you're following me on this, because I wanted just to make this video today with regards to this. My point is, if you're going to pretend now that you can have ownership, then that's a very childish thing to do from this point on, when you know you physically cannot own something. It was here long before you were here, and it will be here long before you are gone. You can't create and you can't destroy these atoms. They exist. They just exist, and that's it. And the point is, I don't want, once you understand something about, ownership, what we've just been talking about, I don't want you to carry on from this point, denying logic, because that, to me, is like pretending that you know what is right and what is wrong, right? And then, just going on regardless with that knowledge and pushing it to the side and still pretending that there is such things as ownership in this world, because there's not. I think, if majority of people could grasp what I'm talking about here with regards to the logic, understanding of ownership, it would change the world as we see it. That I don't think people would be fighting so much over resources, and I don't think this world would be in the economic situation that it's in right now. I believe if we, it really is a big thing, is what I'm saying. I also wonder whether you look around at, the way things are going, and you notice a gradual de-escalation of, perhaps the way our world was 20 years ago, with regards to, it seemed a lot more happier place. It really did. I have to say this, when I was in my 20s, early 20s, it seemed as though there was still opportunity, and, there wasn't so much pressure just to survive, just to keep going, as there is today. In fact, I believe now that I had probably more money around me back then than I did now. It seems that, as soon as you get an amount of money these days, it's gone on something, and there's never really enough left over to save. It's impossible almost to save. But I think that's to do with the already collapsed economy. And why do I say it's already collapsed? Because you've got to, I suppose, sit down and think about it. What does a collapsed economy look like? Well, I think a collapsed economy is going to have a few of these things in it. You're going to notice hospitals, fire stations and police services reducing. The military is going to be reducing, and what we're seeing is, as a result of that in the West, we're seeing, the country's military reducing, but they're all putting into a kitty together to get, a substantial military force, as opposed to trying to hold on to a military force yourself. Now, even America has recently, asked NATO that they've got to start funding more, because America cannot foot, as it is doing already, 75% of NATO costs. So it wants, these NATO countries to do more. That's what the NATO summit was really about. They're never going to say that, but that's what it was about. The financial situation that the United States faces right now is becoming critical. And like I say, hospitals, fire stations, police services, the armed forces are all signs of cutbacks. When a government is struggling to keep its self in a manner that it was accustomed to 20 years ago. It's not just those few things. You see benefits stagnating. They're not increasing the benefits, and you also see jobs going. And I'll tell you why the jobs are going to go is because people are buying cheap, and when they buy cheap, it's usually imported. So if they continue to buy cheap because they're trying to stretch their budget as far as they can, they tend not to buy stuff manufactured in their own country, because the wages in their own countries is paid simply more than it is in India. So that's why factories are moving to India, China, Japan and all those other countries where the labour's cheaper. It's a false economy, because eventually what happens is what happens now, is that the few jobs the jobs become fewer and fewer in these Western countries because everyone's doing the same. Now I believe the government should have intervened when they seen this happened and tried to reverse it. They should have kept the manufacturing in their own countries, and there would have been more money to spend, and I dare say the economy would have been more sustainable than what it is. We could talk forever about what actually causes an economic collapse and what doesn't, but the facts are this: when you see benefits being cut and they don't increase, with currencies that hyperinflate, then something seriously wrong. When they start to be act corruptly and start to steal money like they did in the Cyprus situation, things are in economic collapse, if you ask me. When you look at, say, the Americans and the British at the moment, there's quite a few people, hundreds of thousands, and I know that this totals probably, someone said to me the other day, nearly 100 million in America that are on food stamps. Well, the situation's bad, but not on the scale that it is in America, and that's simply because there isn't that many people here in the UK, but there is a lot of people, going to food banks for food, and these people work as well. The problem is that these people that are in charge, that was given the job, which came with a title as public servant or a public service provider, they have not provided a service to the public. It does seem more so these days that they've provided a service to CEOs on Wall Street and in the City of London, these banking capitals around the world. And this extends to this new generation of people that are leaving university having ranked up a fortune in student costs to get their education. When they come out, they find that there isn't a position for them in society, and there's more competition for the jobs in society, and they simply end up, in some circumstances, taking the only job available to them. So you could have quite literally a physicist or a scientist, or some really a veterinary doctor or something like that along those lines, working in McDonald's or Burger King flipping burgers for the lowest amount of pay you could pay someone and get away with it. And that is absolutely wrong in my view. You see, when I say the economy has collapsed already, it's because I've noticed all these things that economies rely on when they're flourishing. And the point is we've been let down massively, because it is the 1% that claim ownership falsely, as we've already discussed in the beginning of this video, to everything that is causing the problems, because they, I'm sure, are aware of one thing. What am I talking about? Since we've started to become technologically advanced, we've started to mechanise the working environment more and more. And by doing that, we've been putting human beings out of work. We've also been increasing the population over the last 20-30 years that we've really been technologically advanced. And there isn't no jobs. Yet the governments haven't subsidised people with even benefits or jobs that would, give them a living wage. And what's happened is there's been such a stockpile now of working force that is not employed, that it has become a premium to get a job, and these employees know it, and they are only offering minimum to bare minimum wages for these people, because they know there is an ample amount of stock out there in the workforce that they can pick and choose from. And they know this, and they've not addressed it. And the reason why they have not addressed it is because they know the capital system has stagnated. And I guess by now they also realise that not only has it stagnated, and it was going to do so, when we went down the road of technological advancement, but we have completely passed a new threshold, like a thermocline, in the economic market, where it is only possible to earn money on, reasonable scales now if you are by some way corrupt. And that is one of the things that the capital system encourages, corruption. And we're seeing this now. We're seeing car manufacturers that can't quite get what they would want to sell the vehicles for, so they factor in 3 or 4 years of components that will require the person to bring back the car after the warranty runs out, because they know the quality of bearings that they've used, the quality of electronics that they've used will return a certain amount of money, so that they can balance the books at some point. Maybe not at the time or point of sale of that brand new vehicle or washing machine or whatever, but certainly during the period of its lasting, its life expectancy. So guys, it is a terrible place that we're in. I mean, I feel rotten sometimes keep talking about these situations, but it's, if we can't do nothing about the problems, and sometimes we feel like that because we know what we need to do, we all need to stick together just for a couple of days. We could work this problem out. We could show them that we're not prepared to stand here and just be diluted and wore away with the sands blowing on the evening. We're not prepared to do that. We could stand and do something about it, but we know not all of us are going to do that. And we know that certainly whilst the 1% are enjoying the benefits of what the capitalist system provides, i.e. plentiful amounts of money, plentiful amounts of land that they falsely own, and it's an imaginary thing that they haven't even probably been confronted with, the fact that they can't physically own anything. But it's a mess, to say the least. And I'm not the most smartest man on the world, but I do see it. And when I see it slowly eroding our ways of life, what we've built up to, and now, it's been unpicked by hedge funds and, greedy people that won't realise it, and they're holding back the change that this world needs to progress further, perhaps for another 50 years. I believe that, like the seasons change, we should prepare for big changes in our evolution as we go along, and I believe that the capitalist system's expired and it needs another system. And one thing I did like about Russia is that they was prepared to experiment with what they did, some would say communism, but it failed because not everyone was abiding to the system. And I mean, even Hitler wanted to do this. He wanted to, produce, a car for everyone and blah blah blah. That's history. I could talk about that for ages. But we grasp, the concept of what I'm talking about. Ownership is impossible, and the capitalist system's got to go, because we're already in a collapsed economy. The economy has already collapsed. What you're going to see is the eroding of what is left. And for sure, that's what we're seeing right now. And it's awkward for me. It must be for you as well, because you can see it happening, but it's just beyond your grasp to do anything about it. And this is why, people like myself and many thousands now are preparing, because we don't know quite for certain how long this is going to continue. We don't know whether it's going to collapse tomorrow. But what we do know is it's coming to an end. And when it comes to an end, we are going to be a little bit more prepared than someone that is, dumbstruck by the announcement of, social unrest and revolutions taking place in even these Western worlds. The governments are aware of it. They know. Don't forget, they are think tanks. Prepare for such circumstances. You want proof of this? if we just concern ourselves with London, they're ordering 3 water cannons. The mayor has ordered 3 water cannons. Now, if he didn't think trouble was coming, he wouldn't waste £3 million on water cannons. America are arming their police to the same or equivalent levels of military. In fact, they're militarising their police. When they're having their MRAMs pull up into the streets, and you look just what happened recently over that shooting in one of them states in America, you can see the sort of style of what they're coming out in now. It's more of a combat style as opposed to a policing style, and this is just something that other news agents and mainstream media have picked up on. It's a mess, guys. What would change it? Would a new technology that come about change it? Something that everyone needed, and something that could alleviate what these greedy people were chasing, and that is money and resources. And we know the main thing is energy. It's energy what they're going after. So perhaps if we could come up with an alternative form of production of energy, we could probably change the way things are done on this planet. I've been looking at something recently with regards to this, and sometimes when you watch a few videos, you ponder, what is the point in me watching this? What is the point in me watching that? And then all of a sudden you realise something in that video that you just saw, and you take a snippet from this and a snippet from that, and you start putting all these little fragments together, and you start to think about something and think about the possibilities of it, and perhaps even to the point where you might even have a working principle, if not only in theory. But what I'm talking about is what I'm going to put out in probably another video today, and I'll try and make it brief, right? But it's something we can explore if you're interested. I don't have the money to buy all the equipment necessary to do it, but I don't believe it would cost that much. And even if we could get some people to put some money in to get the equipment that we needed to examine this idea, if it was successful, the results would be phenomenal. What about if I said you could heat water up to steam without using a fire or an element, or some form of boiler? What about if there was another way of doing it, and once it reached boiling temperature it probably continue boiling? Because there are some circumstances in which you can subject water to actually do that. Food for thought there for you guys. Like I say, if I get a bit more time today, I'll bang that other video up and I'll show you a few of the videos that I was watching, and it suddenly dawned on me that there was perhaps something of a workable idea in here. Now, what's good about heating up water? You might think, if we can boil water, we can use a steam turbine to drive a DC motor or a generator to produce electricity. And if we all can do that easily at our own homes, then we are one step closer to getting off the grid. That's got to be worth something. That's got to put a spanner in their cogs. If people know how to do it and they can't control it, that's got to put a spanner in their cogs. Anyhow, guys, I apologise for the length in time which I've took to do this video. I want to make sure I bang those points home with regards to ownership. Don't, after knowing this, if you can understand logic, act it out. Don't be childish to just push this now aside, because it's a foundation on which could change the earth. If people start to think more logically about what the Earth is, how the Earth works, what's the actual Earth made of, and then, you know, it's recognition of it being part of this universe, you know, recognition of what we're built up of. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Again, I apologise, guys. You know, I'm pretty sure you see the way things are in this world. And if you've got any ideas on how to change things, or, you know, you want to discuss some of the things that you've spotted that have changed in your life, then the comment section is there, guys. You know, I always read your comments. And I'm going to say what I usually do, guys. It's probably a good time to prepare if you haven't. And even if it's a small amount, it doesn't make any difference. It's always massively rewarding if you ever need, even those small things that you put away. So I'll say what I usually do. Again, bye for now.